I'll start off with one question. I imagine this will be more of a conversation.
Great.
And it will be from each of you, from your leadership perspective, what steps should be taken to capitalize on the current opportunities in this space, the current opportunities that the Undersecretary has mentioned, or opportunities that you see in general?
So when we talk about higher education, I think, for me, and where I am and the things that I'm understanding and learning in this process, you have, let's say, preschool, right? We talk about the school to prison pipeline. If we're not talking about educating our kids first, because we're always chasing the plane after it crashes, right? I think what's important is we have to also identify those youth who aren't educated, because numbers tell us if an individual isn't reading at third grade level, they tend to be incarcerated. So I think it's very important we start having those conversations mirrored with higher education within the prison systems.
Good morning, everybody. I'll say a couple of things. I'm somebody that certainly appreciates the value of higher ed. I was the first in my family to graduate high school and then college. And I actually had to take 1.5 years off from college because my family and I had exhausted all of our student loans and I couldn't afford to go back, which felt like the most unfair thing. And I ended up working at a mall and then decided I wasn't ready to give up on myself. And I wrote this sad little letter to the director of financial aid. And I begged him to let me to come back. And he never called and he never emailed. And one day I received a letter in the mail. And essentially he had paid for 3 years for me to finish my education. It has changed my life. It has changed the life of my entire family. It enables me to support them in ways that they just aren't able to support themselves. President Harris mentioned my cousin, who was first justice involved at the age of 12. He was arrested for stealing a toy. He never left the justice system. When he was 19, he was sentenced to 60 years in prison. So I've spent 32 years visiting the prison facilities in the state of Connecticut as a visitor, and so it is surreal that I get to visit them working in the office of the governor. And I think about that. Every time I visit a facility, I think about my cousin who was 15 or 19 walking in those same spaces in a very different capacity. I will say that he was released just this April. He had a sentence modification application that was approved. So he is home, and he's a full-time student at but during his 33 years of incarceration, I was his executive assistant. So he always would call, and I always had homework. And he just happened to have been sentenced when Pell went away. And I remember for 33 years him sending me on these scavenger hunts to try to figure out what colleges or universities had programs for people in prison that wanted to complete their education. So I would mail out requests for brochures and I would send them to him. And then it was the cost. And I remember I was like, I don't know, making $30,000 a year, my salary at one point. And I remember thinking how much I could budget so I could send to him so he could just take a class. Because I just needed him to have something. I think I needed to have something knowing that he, at that point, was going to spend the rest of his life in prison. And I just had to know that this thing, maybe this class, would just keep him going. So for me, this idea of ensuring that everyone that is incarcerated has access, to higher ed is really personal, as you can hear, both because of my own experience and my cousin's experience, and really grateful to everybody for showing up this morning. Brandon? Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My coffee is not working yet, which is why I wanted Thea to go before me. This space, this work isn't new to me. I see many of my colleagues in this space, and so delighted to see Representative Walker, who took me under her wings a long time ago to help me understand the importance of justice-impacted family, especially youth. And so from my perspective, I'm going to take a different approach to the conversation. As the new ED, Executive Director for the Social Equity Council, I believe it is our responsibility to take a harder look at sort of the start of the journey before we even get to this idea of higher education. And while higher education is important, you can educate, you can provide opportunities, but there are other societal needs that many of our family and friends, they actually need, right? Housing, access to a job. I always say college, it was my safest place. I ain't had no money, but I was there. Safest place in the world, no worries. And I often share with many of my friends how GHETTO, ghetto adulthood could be. Y'all can laugh, that was a joke. And so understanding how serious adulthood is, for me, investing into programs, that's good, but there are some systems that we've got to address. And many of you are doing it right now. And so from my perspective, we've got to take a harder look at access to job opportunities. And one of the things that my office is continuing to look at is this idea of creating opportunities to enter into a new industry that we're professionalizing, and that is the legal cannabis space for many of the individuals who have been impacted by the war on drugs in our communities throughout the state. And once we are able to provide those resources, job opportunities, professional training in an industry that many folks ended up in prison, like my father, who served upwards of 40 years total in prison, in and out. So it's impacted my family as well as my colleagues on this panel. And so for me, if Daddy had an opportunity to just be in a system that was supportive beyond his family, my mother and his siblings, I think he probably would have had another opportunity. Now, there's some consequences and some decisions he made, so we get that. Ownership is important. But on the same token, how can we, in this room, collectively provide those needed resources to help support individuals as they re-enter our community?
First, want to thank each of you for sharing what is at stake for you as leaders, and to be grateful that you're in positions of leadership in different facets of this small and remarkable state you have here, to lead us in a new direction, in your own way. I'm very grateful to that. I will say that some of the warnings that you have voiced are heard loud and clear. To make an intervention of this kind, to work to transform, use Pell, and to transform our prison systems. That is the point. A state, a higher educational community, a correctional or agency executive leadership that tries to bring in the era of Pell without transforming the prison system is destroying a great opportunity that has been handed to us. And I think that is one way that we are going to envision this work, in ways that try to attend to what you are telling us, to try to listen and follow. This is about opportunities to build a new generation of institutions. And not only in how we respond to moments of crisis and trauma, but to the structures that produce them and facilitate them. I just want you to know that that is what this is a very early map, and thank you to IMRP for, at the 11th hour, trying to assemble this map that brings together our higher educational institutions, our prison institutions, and our disparately impacted area maps that drive this council. That is an attempt to keep us honest. This is not the final map. I just want to bring everyone to, why on earth is that map on there? The war on drugs map, our cannabis wealth redistribution strategy map. right? Our higher educational map and our carceral systems map, because this is where people are moved throughout the state. This is where money and how money moves throughout the state. This is to keep us honest so that we are listening to you. And I think the visions to which you're pointing us. And so it's the beginning of envisioning these things. And so I want to thank you for that and say we're listening, and keep us honest, and we will do this together. So
All of you are very familiar with Hartford. We're sitting in Hartford today. How can we align these resources, the higher ed, Medicaid expansion, social equity opportunities, other things that are happening in and around us, to better impact the areas that have been, essentially ravaged by the war on drugs and mass incarceration?
When we talk about Connecticut, and I think, not too many people are aware, or if they are aware, they're not paying attention to. So in Connecticut, there's 64 census tracts that's considered concentrated poverty, right? And in Hartford alone, there's 41 census tracts. And you say, well, 2, no one's living there. But 19 is considered concentrated poverty. And I can guarantee you, if we look at that map right there, it reflects those communities that have been impacted in concentrated poverty right now. So for me, which is, and I'll say it on record, the noble thing is to focus on person. That's noble. That's noble. Everybody needs opportunity. But we have to start focusing on place and making sure that those places that are impacted by these issues have those resources focused in on those places. So
This is always a difficult answer to respond, or question to respond to. And so one of the things that we've been doing in our office is getting back to the basics and reintroducing the Social Equity Committee, or Council rather, so that people can fully understand who we are and what programs and services we actually offer. And I always start out by saying, we work alongside many of you that are already doing the work. Our goal is to leverage, but also raise the red flag, we have an issue. In many of these DIAs throughout our state, which has already been mentioned by one of my board members, I'm sitting between two, Daniel and Corrie, who serve on the council. But what we're doing now is really creating systems by which we're able to measure the success of the monies and dollars that we're reinvesting back into these communities. It's easy to try to be the answer to every single social ill, but how can we focus in, is a big question, on some of these larger challenges? And it could be multiple. Right now we're talking about education. And really work alongside those partners in our communities that could really help in these neighborhoods. For me, it's a big, tall task. And so it's always easier to identify existing funds and programs where we can leverage and really have greater impact. And so I know a lot of you are probably thinking, well, you're saying a lot, but what are you saying? We're still trying to figure it out. And the reality is, while we can come up with our grandiose idea, many of you have a lot of great ideas and programs in place that are already, they have impact. How can we work alongside you? But I'm not watering down our mission and our vision. We know that individuals have been impacted by the war on drugs. And so there are higher need communities, not to suggest other communities like Eastern Connecticut and other places don't deserve support, but we all know those places throughout this state where the impact has been great. And let's start there.
It is true that there is a lot of funding available. I think Connecticut is small, but there is a lot of philanthropic dollars. The state's made huge investments over several decades, but yet and still we find ourselves facing some of these same issues. And so, I'm at this place where I don't think it is so much about not having enough money. I think it's about not having enough courage. I think money is much more easier to try to get than having courage to make policy decisions, to do the work. And I will say to you, I was at the city of Hartford for 8 years as its chief operating officer. We focused a lot on how to better support the needs of those that are justice involved. And that included opening the reentry center, where folks coming home from incarceration had a place to go so that they could transition successfully. And I remember arguing with a resident who did not want the reentry center at Hartford City Hall because he thought it would be very dangerous for those people to be in the building with, let's say, an elderly person coming to pay their taxes. And it was like one of the few times I think I actually raised my voice, and I was like, you realize they're amongst us already, right? Like, but I am forever grateful for the mayor, it was Luke Bronin at the time, who backed me up. We would not back down. And we were like, this building is a people's building. And people that have a criminal history are people. And so this means this is their building too, right? And so again, that was about having courage. That wasn't so much about having funding. And it also, I remember the time, that there was funding available for various programs. I think the most recent example is the COVID federal relief dollars. And, figuring out how we were going to spend those dollars and trying to be really thoughtful about it. But I remember spending hours and hours at City Hall until midnight by myself, like figuring out what is this plan going to look like. And I don't think we talk enough about what it takes to actually do something well, right? Oftentimes we make value statements, and I think we can all be in agreement about what's the right thing to do. But I don't think we talk enough about what it actually takes, the time and the energy. And that, sometimes isn't things that get shared on social media, right? Or that, is obvious when you're speaking. It's the things you're doing when you're by yourself, when there's no one else around. And I just can't stress that enough. With all these resources that we have access to, it is also about being really strategic and relentless and disciplined about how we spend those resources. And I think first and foremost, figuring out, what do we think, Daniel and I talk about this, what does good look like? And then backing into that, right? So, yeah.
Wow, okay, there's, obviously, we have 3 or 4 days left in these gatherings across the state, so maybe we will begin to scratch the surface of what's just been said from our 3 panelists here. I'm going to take a crack at a 2-minute version with multiple points, so bear with me. Thea, I'm going to get myself into trouble here. I am astounded from the day I entered state government in the Walz administration 6 or 7 years ago by how much treasure, how much money can be spent while things stay the same. Astounding. From 16 billion to what are we at? Chair Walker, Andrew, 22, 23? 24. Thank you, I'm glad I missed it by under 1. 24 billion. And what is changing? We have mastered the art of moving billions, of moving so much and changing so little. Astounding to me. Of the things we need to do to try to make some effort at keeping ourselves honest, that may be top of the list. This is millions of dollars of Medicaid money. We need to draw down every penny, but it needs to drive change. We cannot leave their children in the same place their mom and dad were. We're going to draw down millions of Pell dollars that we are currently leaving on the table. We are under-enrolling by hundreds or thousands of people currently and leaving millions of Pell money on the table right now, we're going to stop that. We're going to draw that money down. Money we've already paid to Washington and which we fail every year to draw down enough. But we've got to do it in a way that does not reproduce what we have already, but that drives change. And so it is, again, Thea, thank you very much. It is not about the money, it is about the change. Can money be a change agent? Can these federal flows be a change agent? Because we certainly know, we know how to do it so that they're not. Secondly, some false choices. And I'm happy to carry on this conversation. It's ongoing. We are presented with false choices all the time. Part of the way we would like to pursue this work is to question, if not outright say no, to the choices we are ostensibly given. The choice between adults and children. False choice. The choice between trades and the liberal arts. False choice. I want both. We want both. Or as our sisters from the Triangle Short Fire once said, we want bread and we want roses. We hear that one of the ways to deal with place in Washington is to allow people to move to opportunity. We heard that phrase before? Get out. Get up and go. Flee. Escape. Go somewhere else. Move to opportunity. Now, we all want to be free to move. We all want to be free to choose. To leave home and come back? Or we have an alternative, a choice to invest in those places and communities from which we have taken so much? False choice. We do not need to tell people that they cannot have an opportunity to move or choose between that and our investing in those places from which we have taken so much. So again, false choices. I don't think we have to. People will present us every step we take in Pell, every step we take with this work, we will be presented with each of those three choices. Just, can we join together and just say, no, we want them both? Anyway, thank you.
And individuals should have a choice of where they want to live, right? I'm all about equitable, though, right? Like making sure if I want a steak and I want my steak well done and you want a steak and you want yours rare, that's your choice, right? You shouldn't have to leave to get that steak, though. So, thank you.
Is an ongoing conversation of this idea of moving out of somewhere to get better. That's crazy. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'll say it louder and I'll repeat it again. We must reinvest and redevelop communities hardest hit by the social ills, you name it. But you can't tell me who grew up on Barber Street that I need to move out of my apartment in order to have better access to quality and affordable housing. That's that side. The other piece is, I deserve a job, a good job, in the neighborhood I live. And so resources that my agency, alongside these great people here, are able to bring to bear is working alongside municipal leaders to figure out how can we create these opportunities in these neighborhoods that may not look so cute as yours, but they got some lovely people there that are ready to figure out how to make their communities better. While I may not own and I rent somebody else's house or I have an apartment, Section 8, I'm still human. And so you gotta constantly remind yourselves, sure, there are greater opportunities over there on the other side. Grass might be a little greener, but the roots might be a little weird. We gotta figure out how to help folks where they are.
I just want to say one thing.
Oh, I got them
'Cause
started.
This is, because now we talk about low opportunities and high opportunities areas, right? And we're talking about education. So in the high opportunity areas, there are 2/3 of kids from the ages of 2 to 4 who start in preschool.
Yeah.
compared to 9% in the low opportunity areas. So when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, that's it right there. That's what causes that. So we have to get to the root. So there's a story that I always tell, right? And some of you may have heard it, right? And me and Brandon, we're walking down next to the river, and there's a baby, and we jump in the water and we save the baby. Then there's another one. We jump in the water and we save that baby. But then there's another one, and Brandon say, Corrie, I'm not jumping in that water. Like, no, we got to save this baby. I'm like, no, we have to jump in this water to get this baby. He's like, I'm not doing it. I said, so what are you gonna do, Brandon? I'm gonna go up the hill and find out who the hell is throwing these babies in the water. So it's a difference, right? So we have to stop just jumping in. We have to go up the hill and stop who's throwing our babies in the water in order for things to change, I believe.
I'd also just like to point out from the flip side of some of that conversation of someone who grew up in a high opportunity zone in Farmington and has chose to live in Hartford for 30 years now and moved into I guess what would be designated as a lower opportunity zone. I think people don't realize, because it's hard not to say we don't have two different states, maybe even three, but they don't realize the beauty, the resilience, the community, just the profound love in those communities. That if we're only given the opportunities of Pell, of preschool, of hey, here's I think you'd be good for this job, you know? What do you think coming with me? And if we're only given those opportunities from an early age, we probably wouldn't be having the conversation about what needs to happen in prison. But we're not there right now. So maybe for the last comment from each of you, this panel is about vision. What do we see in the Connecticut in the future? What do we see if, let's say, we get down to the level of incarceration that we were for 50 years before the war on drugs? What do we see in neighborhoods where we have those opportunities?
You know, I have to give a little story of myself. So I'm the first one to graduate from college. I dropped out of school in the 10th grade. And when I reflect back on how school looked for me and what was the gaps and why did I drop out, and right? For one, my own choices, I have to take accountability for me. But the other part was the exposure that I had gotten within that community. And I think it's very important, and what I do see and what I hope to see is that the youth that are coming behind us have the exposure, that someone is exposing them to opportunity, that they can have a choice to saying, okay, if I want to go to school and get a college degree, I'll do that. But if I want to go and get a trade, I could do that. I could do whatever I want to do, and I think that's what I vision, to having individuals see that there are opportunities for them to take, and it don't have to always be the wrong one.
I have an 8-year-old nephew who is the love of my life, and he did something he wasn't supposed to. And my mother, his grandmother, said to him, "Tell Titi what you did." And so he approaches me, and he's really scared, and his lip is pouty because he wants to cry. And he said, "Titi, I'm a bad person. I did a bad thing." And I saw the way he was physically reacting to this idea he was a bad person. And so I spent time helping him understand, you are not a bad person. You made a mistake, maybe it was a bad thing, but you're not bad. And I think about that for people who have committed crimes, who end up being incarcerated, and how we think about them. And I think, we've developed this system based on this belief that there are bad people and bad things have to happen to them. And I think when we as children or adults do bad things, it's often the manifestation of pain. And so what if we developed a system for people that have committed crimes that is based on this theory that you are acting out pain. And so therefore our response is therapeutic in nature. And so that system is there to help you heal. I think that would completely transform the way in which people are incarcerated, the way the facilities are designed themselves, the programming we do, maybe this type of staff that we think should be in those facilities with them. If we came from this place of thinking, not so much what is wrong with you, but what happened to you. And so I think this is an opportunity where Connecticut can lead in the country, specifically with our kids that are justice involved, coming from this place of a more therapeutic approach.
Again, thanks to each of you. My final words will, I think, listening to the three of you, this is what I would like to have my last words here be. I think we envision this work as building from strength. Everyone here who has spoken about people, individuals, whether they're 8 years old or when they're 52, place, right? There is strength, there is humanity, there is resilience, and there is strength. And so this work is all built around, we build from strength. What does that mean pragmatically? When I first started this work as an assistant commissioner in corrections in Minnesota, who was leading the whole Pell effort? Who had really taken Second Chance Pell, not as a student, but as a facilitator, as a leader? Who led that work? 3 correctional officers at 3 different prisons. They were moonlighting, they were clocking out in the morning and clocking back in the evening to facilitate and help people go to college. Nobody at central office was aware, nobody was looking. We couldn't get them gas reimbursement to come and talk about it. They were leading. They saw it was what they wanted for themselves, it's what they wanted for the people they were serving as correctional officers inside those facilities. That's building from strength. We have these strengths inside our systems. The systems need to see and learn from those inside them for whom are departing from the system. They're outliers, but they are leading that way. That's who was doing that work. We built on that work in Minnesota. The same is true inside the classrooms. The amount of talent and human capacity we have there, we have strength. And so we just cultivate that strength, we see it, we partner with it. They lead the way. To their children, what percentage of officers right now in Connecticut started college and haven't been able to finish? They have a transcript without a degree. That's untapped strength. Has anyone ever asked that question in policy and budget? How many people started a degree and couldn't finish? What are we doing to each other and to ourselves? That's crazy. Okay, same thing as other potential students. So how many of them have a dependent child in their family? A nephew or a niece? We're gonna make this our metrics. How do we justify college and prison investments in the future in Connecticut? The graduation rates from high school of those dependent children. That's building from strength. Okay, so we'll figure out how to do this together, but I think we all share this principle. We have so much strength we have to see. It's the same as the money, right? We have the human capacity, we have the wealth, we can do this. So I just want to thank you all. Andrew, can I thank you? And this panel, can I ask you to close this out?
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate your being here today and your voices, as I know we all do. So just a big thanks to